Homies. We're a group of friends play, review, and share about all things board games. Sitting around the table today is...
Reed.
Becky.
Gillian.
And I'm Angela. But before we talk about Apiary, let's talk about what games are bringing us joy. What are we excited to play?
I'm really looking forward to Dune Imperium Uprising. We've had it since it came out and still have not played it. I'm going to be honest, I don't know anything about how it's different other than there are sandworms, but I love Dune Imperium so much. I'm excited to try the second one and figure out if we need to have both on the shelf.
I can't believe you haven't played Uprising. We played Dune Imperium like 4 months ago maybe, and I think Reed's head exploded. And I can't believe, everyone talks about how this game might be the game that you own, and you haven't opened the box.
Oh, I definitely opened the box. We just haven't played it yet.
I know, we have to make it happen. We have so many games we want to play.
Well, for me, I'm most excited about trying White Castle again. Becky and I played it a couple of times a week or so ago. It was very enjoyable. Usually when I play a new game, I can often tell if it's going to be a hit or a miss. And it's a really good sign when I finish playing the game and I immediately want to try it again. And that's what happened with White Castle. And I've really been thinking about it off and on since the last time we played. So I want to give that one another shot.
I'm really anxious about that one. That one was one that came up a bunch. And I think I was leaning towards Kutna Hora and not White Castle because everything I've heard is you only get so many turns. And so it's a real tight play. And I'm not very smart, so I always want enough times around the table to make up for my own stupid mistakes. And I think there's 9 total actions.
9 actions, yep.
No, thank you.
That's what makes it so good, though.
There was a time when Becky's head exploded in the middle of the game. It was impressive.
It's true.
Right after turn 1, you were like,
pretty much. She said, "Can we start over?"
I just spoke about Kutna Hora. Kutna Hora is one that I'm excited about. I was on the fence for a while if I would pick it up because I kind of thought it might be a flash in the pants game, but coming from Czech Games Edition, I shouldn't really worry about that. I kind of thought it was one of those games that got a lot of hype and then maybe it would go away 5 seconds afterwards, but I really obsessed about it. And then I went to the game store and it somehow landed in the trunk of my car, which when I came home, my girlfriend was like, "Is that a new board game?" And I was like, "Absolutely not."
Well, I want to step you there, flash in the pants. That's
I actually really
here.
appreciated that, and I think we should keep it.
Flash in the pants or the board game?
I mean,
Flash in the pants and the board game.
Is that not the saying? Flash in
Flash
the
in
pants?
the pan.
Flash in the pan, like a quick,
wow.
a quick sear, a flash in the pan.
Wow, I've learned something new. I also, for the longest time, said
Wingspan.
You still say wingspan.
I will fight you to the death that it's not called wingspan or that the new one isn't wormspanned. It's appropriate.
But it was funny because you said wormspan, not wormspanned. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I also call it brass Lincolnshire.
I mean, that one's fair. That's British.
That's very hard.
Yeah,
That's fair. Okay. Yes. Well, a flash in the pants kind of game is what I thought it was. So I'm tickled and pickled that we will be playing that game.
All right, and on my exciting shelf of games to play is the Terraforming Mars dice game, which I know has been mixed reviews from many different people, and I'm a big fan of Terraforming Mars. I recently tried to play the dice game by myself, the solo version, which I stopped doing when I discovered it took 50 turns to play. And at that point, I was sick and in bed and realized that I shouldn't be playing dice games in bed with a lot of different pieces, and then slept on them for the next few days. Still have not finished that, but we are looking forward to playing all 3 Terraforming Mars games relatively soon.
I'm looking forward to 2 of them.
Yeah. I like that you said the dice game's gotten mixed reviews because I've yet to hear a good one.
She's just
I like
optimistic.
the dice.
When we review that game and you say, well, the dice are nice.
I hope I do say that.
And then it's just period, end of the game review.
That's the full review right there, folks.
Tune in now for a sneak peek of the Mars dice game, which will be, well, she's got nice dice. Let's talk about Apiary. From a publisher we love, Stonemaier Games, designed by Connie Vogelman and art by Moria. The retail cost is $69 United States dollars. Gillian, how do we play Apiary?
So Apiary is a game in which you take on the role of different bee factions that have survived humanity. You're going out into the cosmos to try to improve your respective hives, and in so doing become the most effective spacefaring bees that there are amongst those around the table. And to do this, you're going about taking different actions, and it's a worker placement game in which you can place your worker bee onto a space and take that respective action, but it has a unique twist in that it doesn't block other players from taking that action. Instead, those players can take the same one, but in so doing, they bump your bee and make it more effective for later use. And so you go from a power 1 to a power 2 up to a power 4, and each one has a benefit in terms of the type of bonus you get for taking a specific action. And so that is really kind of the main focus of the game is worker placement and worker bumping. But you can also retrieve your workers and get different bonuses for it, specifically the strength 4 bees. When you retrieve those, you essentially advance the end game, in which you take your worker strength 4B and hibernate it, and you have a set number of hibernation tokens that go onto a comb. Once a certain number of spaces or regions in that hibernation comb are filled, that triggers the end game. And so it's really a game in which you're trying to score the most points by advancing your spacefaring bees civilization or hive.
Apiary is beautiful. The box is stunning. The board is beautiful. The components are really nice. I really like looking at it and touching the bees.
You shouldn't touch bees, Becky.
That's fair.
Bee consent touching Becky at this table. I really liked that big bee. There's a mothership kind of queen bee that goes around, and normally she's a big mini. And Gillian painted her, so I thought that was really beautiful. So she was moving around this one section of the board where you can collect different resources. I thought it added a little bit of pizzazz. My only downside is this game works in a certain section. There are tiles around that you can kind of farm and get resources. I have a hard time seeing the other side of the board, so it was a little bit too big, and so we, in our second playthrough of the game, had to kind of rotate the board to try and make it as easy as possible. And as what happens with every single game we play, Reed does not put on her glasses, and so somewhere in the middle of the game has to scrounge around for her glasses so she can even see what the tiles are saying. It's usually about halfway through the game, and she somehow wins every time. It's very disturbing that she can win without seeing any of the reading on the tiles.
Well, I definitely did not win my second playthrough of Space Bees. The two games that I had were very different, and I like that it didn't feel super prescriptive for playing the same game twice. The first game that I played, I rarely hibernated and seemed to do some actions that no one else did, which was a lot of the conversion action. And did really well there, having resources that I could only get through that space. And the second time, I failed miserably, and I think I ended up last.
I liked that in the first playthrough, which I don't think any of us noticed, you were pulling tiles that had so much synergy for the end game, for what you were converting so often to get resources, which played into the tiles that you had taken. And I think just stunned when you were counting points, because you, I think, literally crushed us so badly. There were like bees under your shoes is how badly you crushed us. And I would say, like, my first playthrough, it's an asymmetrical factions, and I was really obsessed with trying to flip my tile to get my, like, bonusy level asymmetric faction. But I feel like it was kind of like in Wormspan, kind of like in Wingspan, where you focus a lot on that intro level rewards card, and it didn't have the payoff. So I spent most of the game trying to get a thing that only scored me maybe 4 points, and I really should have said, this one is terrible, I'm not using it, and done other things. So I liked that. Then my second play was different. I had a different faction. I didn't super obsess about it.
Yeah, and I'd say the factions are, there's a wide variety of factions, obviously, and each one kind of puts you down a certain path in terms of playstyle. And the ones that I've had most recently very much benefited from immediately flipping it over, because then whenever you did whatever the faction specialty was, you also scored an endgame point, essentially a victory point. And so that was really useful to get early on, so that whenever you utilized it, you got a point as well. So yeah, definitely depends on the faction you get.
Okay. The thing I hate is how the symbols for your bee workers go one direction on the board.
Tell us more about it. Tell us more
I'm
about
going to. Are you bumping my bee right now? So on the bee workers are like little bee spaceships. There's a clear top and a clear back.
One has a head,
I like
one
it.
has a
Okay.
butt.
You could just say
Thank
butt,
you.
Becky. It's okay. It's still PG podcast.
Am I allowed to say that?
You're allowed to say butt.
Bee butts.
Bee butts.
Okay, the bees, they are basically spaceships. It's a bee spaceship. It has a bee head and a bee butt. And they are on the board. You place those bee workers directly on the board in a spot that has the same outline as the bee ship. And outside of the bee ship is like this oval rectangular outline. And so depending on where you're sitting on which side of the board, if you pick up your bee and you go to place it on the board, it does not orient the same way as the bee outline, and it drives me crazy. And I was thinking about what would make it better, and I think either having like a dual-sided docking mat where one side the bees are facing one direction and the other side they face the opposite direction, so when you pick it up you set it down correctly. Which, saying out loud, I feel like it does not matter, but it bothers me so much.
Yeah, Becky does tend to get caught up on these things.
Or just don't have the bee outline. It could have just been the outline that's more of like a general oval rectangle. And that would have been fine. It would have been clear that's what goes there.
I will say that every time I saw it, I rotated my bee to try and place it, but because Reed has a beautiful mind and is a whirling dervish of chaos, this came up 97 times, because every time Reed placed a bee, Becky was like, ah, and had to turn it.
So maybe I should have switched places with Becky, but then my bees would probably still be backwards.
Still, you would actually rotate them to be backwards.
I thought it was really interesting how many times, and I know you mentioned this earlier, that we rotated the board, but we really rotated the board a number of times to see how we could have the best sight on that. And I do think that if with a 4-player game, it was hard not to have someone not be able to see as well as others.
Mm-hmm.
It got to the point where Reed ended up taking pictures of the endgame hive goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we do play on a board gaming table, which is very beautiful and nice, but it is slightly longer or slightly wider than your dining room table. So I think maybe if you were sitting at a normal sized dining table, this might be less of an issue because you're a little more crammed in around the table. That's not to say that you shouldn't buy beautiful gaming tables, but that you'll have a hard time reading.
Or wear your glasses.
Or wear your
Yes,
glasses.
I could very much do that.
It wasn't just glasses, though.
I know,
It is
yeah.
hard to see the whole thing. And it takes up a lot of space because there's the board, which is large, and then also we each have our hive mats, and then you build onto those with additional little hives. So it ends up taking up quite a bit of space.
My only complaint about the components is that resin and honey are gold and silver, or they're like two different versions of gold. If it was silver, it would be easier, but they're like matte gold and sparkly gold, and they have a similar shape. And I just said that I had a hard time reading the board, and so those resources which were next to me were very hard to keep track of. And so I think from a vision point of view, the fact that I just couldn't read some of the titles, or that I keep getting the components confused, was just a little bit of a miss. I think you could have done something different with one of those to make them really stand out.
I do really like the process of what happens when you bump a bee. You have this bee that you rotate, and it has numbers along the side of it. And so you move 1 to 2, 2 to 3, etc. And I think that that's a really nice size. The bee is a great shape, even if it doesn't fit on the board very well, according to Becky. I really like that process of interacting with the bee.
It has a good bee feel.
Excellent bee feel.
Excellent bee feel. I like what Reed said around the different plays, because the first time, when I finished the first play of Apiary, I was like, how do I feel about this game? And then we came back to it, and I thought about it a lot, and I was really excited for a second play, whereas the first time I was a little waffly about it. During the second play, what I had kind of come to the thought around is there are farm tiles, and each time you take a retrieve action, which is pulling your bees off the board, so say they don't get bumped, you can just pull them off and it takes your turn. You activate all of your farms. And I didn't do that very much because I was like, my bees keep coming back. This is delightful. Thank you guys. But if I had actually taken the retrieve action, I would have stimulated my economy of goods a little bit more. And so I was finding myself using turns at the very end of the game to get resources. And so I think retrieving more often actually would have helped me in my first game because I would have had a better going economy. I also had one less bee in the first play because of my faction, and so I was like, oh, the decisions are so tight with only my 2 bees.
That's interesting. In the first game, I only collected retrieved my bees. I think once toward the end. I was just continually playing because I was the only one bumping my bees, but I think the bee bumping got more intense on the second play.
Yeah, the second game I felt like bee bumping was a lot more widespread, I would say, amongst the different actions.
Now, Becky, you are not necessarily a fan of positive player interactions. Tell us how Apiary went for you in that sense.
Becky is cutthroat.
Becky is very cutthroat. Becky is the nicest person you will meet in your entire life. She will throw herself in front of a car for you, but if you come and play positive player interactions, she's going to stab you.
Okay, first, I've been thinking about this. Why am I like this? And sometimes I think that maybe it's because board games is a space where I get to prioritize myself and what actions I'm making are about me, or how do I make the other person lose, but that's still about how do I win. So I don't know. I've been thinking about it. This is a place for me.
And for Becky to win and for others to suffer.
Yes. Gillian and I played Apiary 2-player the first time, and I was annoyed because Gillian wouldn't bump my bees, which was not benefiting me. Apiary at 2 players, I felt like I wanted more interaction between the bees. So I think it'd be really interesting to play it at 3-player because the side that we played on is 2 to 3-player, and you don't close off any of the bee spaces, so everything is still available. And I think it would be better on a tighter board. And the 4-player game, I enjoyed it more than the 2-player, but I still think I would prefer a little more tightness with the bee actions and seeing more bumping happening. And because the bumping is pretty nice, I mean, it's not great to bump another player because you're going to give them a more powerful bee, but I do think it does make it nicer for people who are playing the game and getting enjoyment out of playing the game and not getting mad at each other. I was going to say going off topic, but I guess I'm not going off topic. I think Apiary is a really great game for light to medium board gamers. Although Gillian really loves this game, and I would say he's pretty hardcore.
Yeah, I do love this game. And regarding the 2-player only, I would say right back at you and that you didn't bump my bees very much. Becky and I would say, even though I mentioned that she's cutthroat, I'm also in that vein as well, sort of. And especially in 2-player only games, Becky and I are very much... we don't want to help each other out. And so we kind of stuck in our own lanes, not wanting to bump each other's bees, and that kind of created the situation where it didn't feel as interactive as it did in the 4-player game. So, we only played it once at 2-player, so it'd be worth giving it another shot now that we have a few more plays under our belt. But
I appreciate that this game is 5-player because Reed and I play in another gaming group that has 5 players. It's hard to find, for me anyway, crunchy enough games at the 5-player level for that tier, because I think a lot of games play really well at 4 or at 3, and that doesn't do a lot for a bigger gaming group. And the gameplay is relatively quick, so I would appreciate that. Say with my other gaming group, I feel like we whizzed through a couple of games here with this group. But the thing that I really enjoy, say you were to play at 5 players, I'm interested in the dynamic of the players help institute the end of the game. So it's not round based. So the more bumping you do, once you get to a level 4 and you have to hibernate, I feel like hibernating, we were like, ha ha ha, the end of the game. Wow, it's not even halfway. And then the end of the game came very quickly because everybody was hibernating and hibernating and hibernating. And you're like, holy crud, I maybe have 2 moves left. And I enjoyed that, not knowing when the end was going to come, because I was also frustrated by not knowing when the end was going to come. And I think at 5 players, that would be an absolute disaster. Like, the game is going to end really, really quickly because you keep bumping people. Great question. Would you play this game again? Would you add it to your collection? Or who would you play this game with?
I really like this game. I think that the Stonemaier games tend to be very, very beautiful, like the boxes, the pieces. And I think that this is a game, especially with 5, that would be a good game, as Becky said, for the kind of like light to medium. I would say more medium from the other people that I tend to play with, where I don't like to go through a huge rules explanation. I like to rely on Angela and Gillian for that. And so I don't know how comfortable I would feel teaching other people to play this game, but I would love to have it so I could play it more.
I don't think I'm going to request Gillian and I play Apiary 2-player very often, or even in this group of board game homies. I don't think I'm going to suggest it as what we should play when we could play Brass Birmingham or Castles of Burgundy. But I do think I'll really appreciate it for when we play with our friends who are not into as crunchy board games. Like Angela and Reed were saying, I think it kind of hits the spot for both sides.
Yeah, echoing pretty much what others have said here. I will say I would add it to my collection. It is in my collection. And I don't have any plans to remove it, much to Becky's dismay.
I would definitely buy this game off you if you ever get to the point of selling it, which is nice. It's hard when you have a great group of friends who play a lot of crunchy games. But this is one that I think traverses that, in that if it found a home in my collection, I don't know that I would buy it because you guys own it. But if the opportunity came and it went on sale at our local board game shop, or if you guys got rid of it, I think it would have a home in my collection because I could see myself playing it with a different gaming group. And this is something where I play a lot of games with my girlfriend. This would be a stretch for her, but I think she would enjoy it. The bees and the bumping and the collecting of resources, but it's more of a stretch. She likes to live in the lighter game area. But I think it's a really great value add. Another good game from Stonemaier. Thank you for listening to Board Game Homies. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and drop us a line on our Instagram page at Board Game Homies. See you next time. Thank you for listening to Board Game Homies.
You're welcome.